Hey guys, it's Steven here from Powell's Power Ups. I whipped up a new chassis for the CC Sabers Slayer lightsaber. A client recently reached out and wanted me to make him one, so I redesigned everything. It's got some freshly updated accents down the sides, and it comes in black, silver, or I can paint it in gold, which I highly recommend because it looks really great with the beautiful crystal chamber that this saber has. It fits easily into the upper section of the hilt and will be held in place by 3 M3 set screws. In the soundboard area, there are deep channels on the sides for easy wire management, and there's a huge port at the top for wires that come from the upper hilt. Opposite of the soundboard compartment, we have the battery compartment. In this chassis, we can fit a 21700 lithium-ion battery. Now, it is a pretty tight fit, so this chassis doesn't come with my usual battery tab holders. We're going to actually just glue the battery tabs directly into the battery compartment with the power wires soldered onto the bottom fronts of the battery tabs. I use E6000 to glue them in, and they kind of sit just like this. And as can be seen, everything fits nicely inside the handle section. When you're mounting the Proffie board inside the chassis, you want to get it as low as possible. You may need to use a file to sand down the sides of the newer Proffie boards. This chassis specifically holds a Proffie board, but I can also do them for Crystal Focus X. Just make sure you get them all the way down. Next up, we have my wire cover, which is extended on this one to hold an OLED screen and also cover up the Proffie board. Simply flip the cover over and you'll see where you can glue in an OLED screen. I also use E6000 for this as well. It presses very easily down into the chassis like you can see here. You want it to be nice and flush so that it looks like it's actually part of the chassis. Pop the wire cover out, you'll use a pair of tweezers inside of the little round spot at the bottom there. This is so that you can still access your Proffie board to do configuration and add sound fonts. The bottom holds a 28mm speaker. You can see on the sides where there's spots for the terminals. Make sure to line it up this way whenever you're inserting the speaker. Here you can see your wire channel where you can run your speaker wires to your Proffie board. I made the speaker compartment a little deeper than normal so that it would be recessed, so that as it vibrates and plays music, it's not hitting into the pommel. On this hilt, I'm specifically talking about that sound vent down there on the pommel. It can sound pretty nasty if your speaker starts vibrating into that. Speaking of vibrations, I like to add a little piece of foam double-sided sticky tape underneath the speaker, which helps absorb some of that vibration to prevent any false clashes. When gluing in your speaker, I'm recommending putting little dabs of E6000 on these 4 spots. When it dries, it'll mount the speaker to this inner lip. You can orient the chassis whichever direction you want. It fits inside the handle perfectly. No rattling or shaking at all. Next to talk about is the middle piece. There's 2 little squares that you're going to line up with your 2 tactile switches, just like so. The upper square opening is for the wires from your switch PCB. The bottom square opening is for these little switch PCB support legs. You may need to sand them down a little bit so that they sit just perfectly. I tossed in some extras in case you get it wrong the first time. They'll need to be glued in place with E6000. Next up is the larger square opening that wraps around a portion of this middle section of the chassis. This is where you're going to put an LED strip. I like to use the big 50/50s just because they're super bright. Here's where your wires from the strip will go, out through the bottom to your Proffie board. On top you can fit a single pixel. This is for illuminating your bottom crystal in your crystal chamber. Finally, we have the last piece of the chassis, the part that goes in the blade socket up top. You can fit in a version 3 NPXL connector from Stock Custom Works, and on the bottom a single pixel which will illuminate your upper crystal in the crystal chamber. I designed the middle and upper chassis pieces to have wire channels that line up with the 2 wire channels inside the hilt behind the crystal chamber. So that wraps up everything. Here's a final look at the chassis. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and may the force be with you.